The sun was dipping low over Sunset Hills, casting long, golden shadows across my perfectly manicured lawn. To anyone driving by, I was just Jack Morrison, the quiet elementary school teacher who volunteered for the PTA and spent his Saturday mornings deadheading roses. I looked the part, too, a crisp polo shirt, ironed khakis, and a face that suggested I'd never raised my voice higher than a hush in a library. But as the heavy, black SUV pulled into my driveway for the second time this week, I wasn't thinking about lesson plans. I was running a tactical assessment. 4 subjects, coordinated formation. Tony Miller was in the lead, his shaved head gleaming. Behind him were his usual shadows, Chad and Mike, but today they'd brought a fourth, a man built like a concrete pillar named Derek Hayes. I knew his file. Former bouncer, history of aggravated assault, currently the HOA's favorite consultant for difficult cases. They thought they were coming to collect a debt from a coward. They didn't know that before I spent my days teaching kids their ABCs, I spent 14 years in a very different kind of classroom, one where the final exam was survival, and the only grade that mattered was mission accomplished. "Go upstairs, Lily," I said, my voice as flat as a desert floor. "Lock the door, don't come down until I call you." Lily looked at the bruise on her temple, the one Tony gave her yesterday when he shoved her down our front steps. Her eyes were wide with a fear that made my blood turn to liquid nitrogen. She didn't argue. She knew that tone. It was the only part of my old life I couldn't quite bury. I stepped onto the porch and closed the front door behind me. I didn't rush. I didn't shout. I stood on the top step, hands relaxed at my sides, watching them approach with the aggressive swagger of predators who had never been hunted. "You again, Morrison," Tony said, not bothering to hide his smirk. He tapped his digital tablet. "We're here for the follow-up. Since you were too busy gradding papers to be a man yesterday, we thought we'd give you one last chance to pay the non-compliance fees before we put a lien on this pretty little house." "The fence is regulation, Tony," I said evenly. "I've reviewed the bylaws. You're citing a 2018 amendment that was overturned by the city council 3 years ago. You're harassing my family for a violation that doesn't exist." Derek, the bouncer, stepped forward, invading my personal space. He smelled of cheap cigarettes and unearned confidence. He was trying to tower over me, his chest puffed out like a blowfish. "Listen to the teacher," Derek mocked, his voice a gravelly rumble. "He thinks books make him smart. Out here, regulation is whatever Tony says it is. Your wife learned that lesson yesterday on these very steps. She was real cooperative once she realized how hard concrete is." Chad and Mike chuckled behind him. Mike had his phone out, recording. They wanted a video of the suburban dad folding. They wanted to see me beg. "You put your hands on my wife," I said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, recorded in the ledger of things that cannot be undone. "And I'll do it again if she doesn't learn her place," Tony spat, stepping up beside Derek. "In fact, maybe we should go inside and have a chat with her right now. Make sure she understands the new rules." He reached out, his hand moving toward my shoulder, a dismissive, patronizing shove meant to move me out of his way. That was his fatal mistake. In the time it takes to blink, the teacher vanished. The man who replaced him moved with a fluid, terrifying economy of motion. I didn't move back, I moved in. I caught Tony's wrist, twisting it just enough to keep him upright but in screaming agony. With my other hand, I gripped the front of Derek's shirt, anchoring him. "Stay exactly where you are," I said. My voice wasn't loud. It was a low, vibrational hum that carried the weight of a cemetery. Derek froze. He saw it then. He looked into my eyes and realized he wasn't looking at a teacher. He was looking at a man who had seen things that would keep a bouncer awake for a lifetime. The smirk on Tony's face didn't just fade, it curdled. "Let go of me," Tony wheezed, his face turning a panicked shade of purple. "That's assault. Mike, you getting this? Call the cops." "Please, Mike," I said, glancing at the trembling man with the phone. "Call them. Tell them to bring Detective Vance. Tell him Jack Morrison needs to file a formal report regarding the systematic extortion and physical assault occurring at Sunset Hills." The name Vance hit them like a physical blow. Tony's eyes darted to mine. "How do you know Vance?" "I don't just know him, Tony. I trained his tactical unit 3 years ago." I lied, well, half-lied. I'd consulted for the department, but the effect was the same. "And while you were busy recording me, my hidden 4K security system was recording you. I have you admitting to the assault on my wife. I have you admitting to extortion. And I have your consultant here threatening a home invasion." I let go of Tony's wrist. He stumbled back, cradling his hand. Derek didn't move. He was staring at my stance, the way my weight was distributed, the way my hands stayed open and ready. He recognized a professional. "You think you're tough," Tony hissed, though he was backing toward the SUV. "We run this neighborhood. We'll make your life a living hell. You'll be evicted by the end of the month." I pulled a small, laminated card from my pocket, not my teaching ID, but a folder of documents I'd printed that morning. Actually, Tony, let's talk about running things. I spent my lunch break looking into the HOA's offshore maintenance accounts, the ones linked to your brother-in-law's construction firm, the ones you've been funneling violation fees into for the last 18 months. It's a classic kickback scheme. Very sloppy, by the way. You used the same IP address for the HOA office and the shell company's registration. The silence that followed was heavy. The birds seemed to stop chirping. The air in the driveway felt thin. You're a teacher, Mike stammered, his phone finally dropping to his side. I am, I said, a subtle, sarcastic edge finally bleeding into my voice. And today's lesson is about overreach. You see, people like you depend on the civility of others. You think because I'm polite, I'm weak. You think because I follow the rules, I'm afraid of people who break them. I stepped down one stair. All four of them took a synchronized step back. But the thing about being a teacher, I continued, is that I have a lot of patience. I wait, I observe, I document, and when the student is finally ready to learn, I deliver the lesson. I held up my phone. I've already sent the digital trail of your embezzlement to the district attorney, and the footage of what you did to Lily, that's going to the evening news, by tomorrow morning. The Sunset Hills HOA board will be dissolved, and you four will be the most famous felons in the county. Tony's face went white. The bravado had drained out of him, leaving behind nothing but a small, pathetic man in an oversized polo shirt. Look, Morrison, Jack, let's be reasonable. We can waive the fees. We can pay for your wife's medical bills, 10 times over. I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who had just finished a very long, very successful hunt. I'm sorry, Tony, I don't give extra credit for late work. Just then, the distant wail of sirens began to crest over the hill. I hadn't called 911 when they arrived. I'd set a silent alarm to trigger the moment they stepped onto my porch. That'll be the authorities, I said, checking my watch. Excellent response time. I'll be sure to mention that in the next community newsletter. As the patrol cars rounded the corner, lights flashing red and blue against the manicured hedges, Derek Hayes was the first to turn and run. He didn't get far. 2 officers had the SUV blocked before he could even reach the door. Tony just stood there, staring at me. He looked like he wanted to say something, some final insult, some desperate plea. But he saw me glance up at the window where Lily was watching, and he saw the cold, absolute lack of mercy in my eyes. He realized, finally, that he had picked the one house in all of California he should have stayed away from. He had mistaken a choice for a limitation. He had mistaken my peace for my weakness. The officers moved in, cuffing Tony and his crew on my driveway. I stood on my porch, the picture of a concerned, helpful citizen. Detective Vance, I said as the lead officer approached. Thank you for coming. These men were quite aggressive. I'm glad you arrived before things escalated. Vance looked at the 4 men being shoved into the back of the cruisers, then looked at me. He saw my clean khakis and my calm expression. Then he looked at the way Tony was trembling. Vance had been on the force a long time. He knew when a predator had accidentally cornered a lion. You okay, Jack? Vance asked, a knowing glint in his eye. Just fine, detective, I replied, my voice smooth and professional. I was just giving these gentlemen a little bit of an education. It's what I do. I watched them drive away, the black SUV being hooked up to a tow truck. The neighborhood was quiet again. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, leaving the world in a peaceful, cooling twilight. I walked back inside and locked the door. Lily was standing at the top of the stairs. The fear was gone, replaced by a quiet, steady relief. I climbed the steps and took her hand, kissing the bruise on her temple. It's over, I whispered. You're sure? She asked. I thought about the files I'd sent to the DA, the destroyed reputation of the HOA, and the look on Tony's face when he realized his life was over. I thought about the 14 years I'd spent in the shadows, and the 7 years I'd spent in the light. I'm sure, I said, they won't be back. They finally learned their lesson. I lead her back to the kitchen to start dinner. After all, it was a school night, and I had a lot of papers to grade. But as I turned on the stove, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked like a teacher. I looked like a neighbor. I looked like a man you could push. And that was exactly how I wanted it. The best predators, after all, are the ones you never see coming until you're already caught.